If you stopped random people out on the street and asked them why a younger woman would ever be drawn to a guy 15, 20, even 30 years older, you'd hear the same recycled answer almost every time. Money, stability, a walking bank account with a heartbeat. That's the narrative people cling to. It's what movies push, what sitcoms poke fun at, and what people repeat online until it starts sounding like fact. But here's the issue with that idea. It's not accurate. Not even close. And if you're an older man who's been believing that version of reality, you've probably been getting in your own way for a long time without realizing it. While you've been stressing over whether your income looks impressive enough, whether your lifestyle stacks up, or whether you can compete physically with younger guys, you've likely overlooked what actually matters to her. The things she's been quietly hoping to find, but rarely does. So settle in for a minute, because what's really going on in her mind is different than what you've been told. What she responds to isn't obvious on the surface, and most men miss it entirely, even when it's right in front of them. By the time we're done here, you'll probably see this dynamic in a completely new way, maybe for the first time. Let's clear something up first, because if we don't, none of this will land. The assumption is simple. Younger women date older men for financial gain. That's it. It's an easy answer, a convenient one. It lets people avoid thinking deeper about what's actually happening. But think about this for a second. If money were the real reason, why do so many young, wealthy men struggle to maintain relationships? Why are there guys in their late 20s with serious money who can't keep someone interested beyond a few dates? Why are some of them paying for advice just to understand why they keep getting ignored? Clearly, money alone isn't solving the problem. It never has. What's really going on is less comfortable to admit. A lot of younger men are missing something important. And older men, especially the ones who've put in real work on themselves, tend to have more of it. So, what is it exactly? Let's get into it. The first thing she picks up on might surprise you. It's not flashy confidence or rehearsed charm. It's stillness, a kind of calm presence. A man who isn't trying to impress, isn't putting on a show, and isn't scrambling to win her attention right away. Watch how most younger guys react when an attractive woman shows up. They tense up. Their minds start racing. They adjust themselves, check their phones, try to appear a certain way. Everything about them shifts into performance mode. And it's obvious. She notices it immediately, and honestly, it gets tiring. Now compare that to a man who's lived enough life that her presence doesn't throw him off balance. He doesn't change who he is. Maybe he glances up, acknowledges her, then goes right back to what he was doing. No urgency, no neediness, no act. That kind of calm is powerful. And what makes it even more impactful is how rare it is. In a world where everyone is constantly trying to be seen, constantly seeking approval, someone who is simply comfortable in his own skin stands out without trying. She might not describe it this way. She may call it maturity or say he seems grounded. But what she's really reacting to is the lack of desperation. And that's not something you can fake. It either exists or it doesn't. The next thing goes even deeper. She's craving real conversation, not surface level back and forth. Not playful texting that goes nowhere. Actual conversation where she feels heard. Most communication now is rushed and fragmented. Quick messages, emojis, half-thoughts sent at odd hours. Many guys her age haven't even experienced a genuine, uninterrupted conversation that lasts longer than a few minutes without distractions. Then she meets someone who listens, someone who processes what she says and responds thoughtfully, someone who doesn't rush to talk over her or steer everything back to himself. That experience hits differently. It feels grounding. It feels real, like she's finally being understood beyond the version she shows publicly. That kind of interaction is rare, and when it happens, it leaves an impression. Then there's something even more important, though it's rarely spoken out loud. She wants emotional steadiness. Not just physical safety, but a sense of calm in how a man handles himself. She doesn't want to worry about unpredictable reactions. She doesn't want to manage someone else's moods or tiptoe around fragile egos. A lot of younger men are still figuring that part out. Their emotions can be intense and reactive, and relationships start to feel like constant maintenance. When she encounters someone who isn't like that, someone steady, someone who doesn't spiral over small things, it's a completely different experience. There's relief in it. She can relax, and that feeling, it outweighs superficial traits every time. It's not loud or flashy, but it sticks. Now let's clear up a few misconceptions. She's not looking for a replacement parent. That idea gets thrown around a lot, but it's misleading. She's not interested in being talked down to or guided like she doesn't understand her own life. She also isn't drawn to someone pretending to be younger than he is. That kind of behavior comes off as insecure, not attractive. Trying too hard to fit into a younger mold does the opposite of what you think. What actually works is the opposite, being fully okay with who you are. your age, your experiences, everything that comes with it. That acceptance creates the foundation for everything else: calmness, depth, presence. And that leads to the final piece: presence, real undivided attention. In a world full of distractions, giving someone your full focus is incredibly rare. No phone, no divided attention, just being there in the moment. When someone experiences that, they don't forget it. It stands out because it almost never happens anymore. Attention has become fragmented, and genuine connection has taken a back seat. A man who understands the value of his attention and gives it fully offers something that can't be bought or replicated. It's not about resources or status. It's about being fully engaged. So what does all this mean for you? It means stop trying to compete in areas where you're naturally at a disadvantage. You're not meant to outmatch younger men in energy or trends. That's not your lane. Your advantage lies elsewhere, in your presence, your steadiness, your ability to connect in a real way. Those aren't secondary traits. They're the main ones. And when you stop seeing your age as something to overcome and start recognizing it as something that adds value, everything shifts. The dynamic changes. You're no longer chasing, you're attracting. Picture this: a quiet setting, a woman fully engaged, leaning in, completely focused. Across from her is a man who isn't trying to impress her with anything external. He's just there, grounded, attentive, real. She's not drawn in by status or appearance. She's drawn in by how he makes her feel in that moment. Seen, heard, comfortable. That's the difference. That's what actually matters. So the real question isn't whether she could be interested in you. It's whether you've developed the qualities that make that connection possible. Think about that. Now here's where things start to shift in a way most people don't expect, because once you really understand all of this, you start noticing patterns you probably ignored before. You start seeing why certain interactions felt off in the past, why some connections never quite clicked, and why others, rare ones, felt effortless without you being able to explain it at the time. A lot of men spend years focusing on surface-level improvements. Better clothes, better photos, sharper one-liners, more polished social skills. And none of that is useless, but it's not the core. It's decoration. If the foundation underneath it isn't solid, all of that effort ends up feeling hollow the moment someone looks a little closer. What actually changes everything is internal alignment. When how you think, how you feel, and how you show up are all in sync, people pick up on it instantly. There's no friction in your presence. No sense that you're trying to be something you're not. And that's where a lot of older men unknowingly have an edge, if they've allowed their experiences to shape them instead of harden them. Because let's be honest for a second, time alone doesn't automatically make someone better. There are plenty of older men who are just as reactive, just as insecure, and just as approval-seeking as they were in their 20s. The difference isn't age. It's whether or not you've actually processed what life has handed you. A man who's learned from his experiences moves differently. He doesn't rush. He doesn't cling. He doesn't feel the need to prove himself in every interaction. There's a quiet confidence there, but it's not loud or performative. It's just steady. And that steadiness shows up in subtle ways. The way he pauses before responding instead of reacting instantly. The way he can disagree without turning it into a conflict. The way he can sit in silence without feeling like something's wrong. These are small things on the surface, but together they create a completely different emotional experience for the person across from him. Now flip that perspective for a moment and imagine what it feels like from her side. She's used to interactions that feel rushed, slightly chaotic, sometimes even draining. Conversations that jump around, energy that spikes and crashes, attention that comes and goes. Then suddenly, she's sitting across from someone where none of that is happening. The pace is calm. The energy is grounded. There's space to actually think, to actually feel, to actually be present. That contrast alone is powerful enough to create attraction without anything else needing to be added on top of it. And here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Attraction isn't always about excitement. Sometimes it's about relief. Relief from the noise, the pressure, the unpredictability. Relief from feeling like you have to constantly perform or keep up. That's why the kind of presence we've been talking about hits so deeply. It's not overwhelming. It's not flashy. It's steady in a way that makes someone feel like they can finally put their guard down a little. But there's a catch, and this part matters. You can't manufacture that feeling by using techniques. The moment it becomes something you're trying to do, instead of something you naturally are, it loses its authenticity. People can sense that mismatch, even if they can't explain it. So the real work isn't about learning lines or strategies. It's about removing the internal noise that makes you feel like you need those things in the first place. The overthinking, the need for validation, the habit of constantly evaluating how you're being perceived. When that quiets down, your behavior changes without you forcing it. You listen more. You react less. You become more observant, more patient, And ironically, that's when you become more engaging without trying to be. Another thing that starts to happen is you become more selective, not in a judgmental way, but in a grounded, self-respecting way. You're not trying to win everyone over anymore. You're paying attention to whether the connection actually feels right for you too. That shift alone changes the entire dynamic, because now the interaction isn't one-sided. It's not you trying to earn approval. It's two people exploring whether there's something real there. And that balance is incredibly important. It also removes a lot of unnecessary pressure. When you're not attached to a specific outcome, you're naturally more relaxed. You're not overanalyzing every word or second-guessing every pause. You're just there, experiencing the moment as it unfolds. And that's where your best interactions come from. Not from control, but from presence. Not from effort, but from clarity. At this point, you might be realizing that none of this is about tactics in the traditional sense. It's not a checklist you can run through before a conversation. It's a way of being that carries through everything you do. And yes, it takes time to develop. It takes awareness. It takes a willingness to look at your own patterns and question them honestly. But the upside is that once it's there, it doesn't switch off. It becomes part of you, which means every interaction benefits from it, not just the ones you're thinking about right now. Your relationships improve. Your communication becomes clearer. Even the way you handle challenges starts to shift. So when people reduce all of this down to something as simple as money or status, they're missing the bigger picture completely. They're focusing on what's easy to measure instead of what actually drives connection. And if you've been focusing on those external markers, it's worth reconsidering where your attention is going. Because the things that truly matter here aren't visible at a glance, but they're felt almost immediately. That's the difference. And once you see it clearly, you can't really unsee it. There's also something else that starts to become clear once you really sit with all of this, and it's a little uncomfortable at first. A lot of what people call chemistry isn't random at all. It's not luck. It's not just two people magically clicking out of nowhere. More often than not, it's a response to how someone makes you feel in their presence, moment by moment, without you even realizing it. And when you understand that, you stop chasing the idea of being impressive, and you start paying attention to the experience you're creating. Not in a manipulative way, not like you're trying to engineer emotions, but in a grounded awareness of how your energy affects the space around you. Because think about it, someone can say all the right things, hit every correct note in a conversation, and still leave you feeling nothing. And someone else can be far less polished, even a little rough around the edges, but you walk away remembering how easy it felt to be around them. That second person is the one who understood something deeper, even if they couldn't explain it out loud. This is where a lot of older men, again, have a potential advantage if they lean into it the right way. They've had enough life experience to know that constant intensity isn't sustainable, that trying to hold someone's attention every second actually pushes it away. That space, silence, and pacing matter more than filling every gap with words. You start to realize that connection breathes. It has rhythm. There are moments of talking, moments of pausing, moments where nothing needs to be said at all. And instead of rushing to fill those quiet spaces, you let them exist. That alone changes the entire tone of an interaction. From her perspective, that feels different in a way that's hard to describe but easy to recognize. There's no pressure to respond instantly. No sense that she has to perform or keep the energy artificially high. She can just be there, the same way you are. And that shared ease, that's where real connection starts to build. Not in the highlights, not in the perfectly timed jokes, but in the in-between moments where both people feel comfortable enough to drop the act. Another piece of this that often gets overlooked is consistency. Not in the sense of routine or predictability, but in emotional presence. Being the same person from one moment to the next. Not hot and cold, not engaged one day and distant the next. That kind of consistency builds trust faster than anything you can say out loud. Because over time, people stop questioning where they stand with you. They stop bracing for unexpected shifts. They relax into the interaction instead of analyzing it. And again, this ties back to something internal. If your sense of self is stable, your behavior naturally reflects that. If it's not, no amount of external effort can fully cover that up. It eventually shows through in subtle ways: tone changes, impatience, overreactions, withdrawal. So the focus always comes back to the same place. Not outward, but inward. Not, what should I do next? But, what's actually driving how I'm showing up right now? Because once you start asking that question honestly, a lot of unnecessary habits begin to fall away. You notice when you're trying too hard. You notice when you're seeking approval. And over time, you stop feeding those patterns. What replaces them is a kind of quiet clarity. You're not guessing as much. You're not second-guessing every interaction after it happens. You trust your own read on situations more, which makes you more decisive without being forceful. And that decisiveness, when it's calm and grounded, is another thing that stands out. Not because it's dominant or overpowering, but because it's clear. There's no confusion in it, no mixed signals. At this stage, something interesting happens. You stop trying to create attraction and you start recognizing it when it's already there. You pick up on the small signals, the way conversations extend naturally, the way attention lingers, the way there's a mutual curiosity instead of one-sided effort. And because you're not forcing anything, those moments have space to grow. You're not rushing them. You're not over-interpreting them. You're just allowing them to develop at their own pace. This also means you become more comfortable walking away when something isn't there. Not out of frustration, not out of ego, but out of simple awareness. If the connection isn't mutual, there's no need to push it. That mindset alone is incredibly freeing. It takes pressure off every interaction because you're no longer trying to make something happen. You're just exploring what's already unfolding. And ironically, that's when things tend to work out more often. Not because you're doing more, but because you're interfering less. You're not getting in your own way. By now, you can probably see that this entire conversation was never really about age in the way people usually frame it. Age is just the surface-level detail people latch onto because it's easy to point at. What actually matters is how someone has used their time, what they've learned, what they've let go of, what they've built internally that doesn't rely on external validation. An older man who hasn't done that work won't naturally have these qualities, and a younger man who has done that work absolutely can. It's not exclusive. It's just more commonly developed over time because life tends to push people in that direction whether they want it or not. So instead of focusing on the number, focus on the substance, on the depth, on the way you show up when there's nothing to prove. Because at the end of the day, that's what people respond to. Not the image, not the performance, but the reality of who you are when all of that is stripped away. And when that reality is grounded, steady, and present, it creates something most people don't come across very often, something that stands out without needing to announce itself. That's what changes the entire experience, not just for her, but for you too.